Greetings, lovers everywhere, and welcome to E-Train Talks. I'm your host, E-Train. I'm a 13-year-old literacy advocate, podcast host, booktuber, and the founder of a 501c3 nonprofit called E-Train Talks, Inc. So today is a very, very exciting day because I'm sitting down virtually with a multi-award-winning author, a highly acclaimed picture book writer, and also she wrote stories for middle graders as well. From Summer at Squee to Watercress, which won the Caldecott Medal and was a Newbery Honoree. This is my interview, if you haven't figured it out already, with the one, the only storyteller legend, Andrea Wang. Woo! Thanks so much for joining
Hello,
me today.
Ethan. Thank you so much for having me and for that wonderful introduction. That's the best one I've had so far.
Well, your stories truly pull readers in and make them feel at home in the pages of your books. And I, for one, cannot wait to learn more about your writing. I've already loved it so much, and I'm sure everybody, after watching this interview, is going to be rushing to bookstores, rushing to anywhere books are sold, and they're going to be checking out your stories.
I
So,
hope so.
all right, so my first question for you is about your newest middle grade book, Summer at Squee. So it starts off with your protagonist, Feeny Fang, excited for her return to Camp Squee, or at least that's what she calls it. So this is an amazing, amazing story. In reality, the name is Summertime Chinese Culture, Wellness, and Enrichment Experience. And there, she's reunited with friends and gets to enjoy being a senior camper, but that's how she wants it to go. However, the story takes many, many turns and things don't look as bright for her. So, can you share a bit about Summer at Squee for those who've not yet had the chance to read your new book?
Sure. So, as you mentioned, Squee is the shorthand name that they call this Chinese heritage camp because, the name is just so long that they've abbreviated it. And Feeny has been going there since she was 6 years old as a day camper. So it is her safe space. Everybody there is Chinese American, like she is. All the counselors are Chinese American. She's made a group of best friends there over the years that she calls the squad. And all 8 of them are planning for this summer to be like the most spectacular summer ever because it's their last time to be together at camp before they get too old. And she arrives and finds that she is not with the squad. And they've been separated into 2 different camp groups, which means that they'll be in different activities at different times of the day, and they won't all be together. So, she's devastated because she was really counting on hanging with her besties all summer. And she finds that the girls who have come into her group actually don't even want to be there. And they don't really want to do the cultural activities that she really loves, and she doesn't understand why. And she, has a lot of anxiety about that. She doesn't like change. She develops a crush on someone, and that makes her really anxious too. And there's online trolls and a whole bunch of things that happen, but at the same time, there's a lot of really fun camp stuff, right? So
Okay.
for kids who might not have gone to summer camp or who wish they could go or just love it there, there's a bunch of different camp things that they do. And they really bond, by the end of camp. They have to learn how to become a community.
Mm-hmm. Now, like you said, there are so many different aspects of this story that make it, in its entirety, a beautiful book. And one thing that I really appreciate about Summer at Squee is you don't really sugarcoat first crushes. You mentioned that Feeny has one of her first crushes, and even in middle school, these feelings are real. I personally know firsthand, so many kids do. And I'm curious, as an adult, how do you go about crafting relatable middle grade characters and their relationships or hopeful relationships?
I think I am still really 12 years old at heart. Um, and I remember vividly my middle school years, and I think that's why I write about it because I'm still trying to process it, right? And I just remember it being a really tough time. Nobody knows what they're doing. Everybody thinks they know, they're supposed to be one way or another, but you know, I listen to my own kids when they were in middle school. I listen to other middle schoolers these days. I read a lot of middle grade fiction as well to stay in touch. But generally, it's just I drawing on my own memories and feelings of, coming of age, right? And honestly, for those relationships, I am not sure that grown-ups really know what they're doing more than middle schoolers. So, we're always wondering what the other person is thinking. It's a
Absolutely.
very anxiety-inducing time.
Mhm. So that's a great answer, and I loved just following along with all the different aspects, all the different storylines, because you really packed a lot into this beautiful book. And my next question for you is another topic that you included, which I hadn't really found before in middle grade. It's the representation of Chinese adoptees who were adopted and moved to America. So I learned so much about this from your book, and more than I'd really ever known before. And I feel that it's really relatable because it can apply to not just Chinese culture, but to all cultures. These are similar experiences that a lot of people have to go through and do go through. So in your story specifically, McKenna and her cousins, they feel judged and pressured because they were adopted, and that might be the reason why they don't really want to participate in these activities. So it's not a spoiler, everybody. There's so much more to this book. So I guess, can you relate to any of the experiences or feelings that McKenna and her cousin specifically went through, and how did you go about researching and writing about this subject?
Yeah, these are great questions. I think I'm always writing stories about kids who feel like they don't belong in one way or another because we all feel like that sometimes, right?
Right.
And those feelings are so much more heightened, I think, in middle school.
Absolutely.
I definitely did draw on some of my own experience. I'm a second generation Chinese American, so my parents were the immigrants. And at that time when I was growing up, they just wanted me to assimilate into American culture. So I kind of grew up in a very white community, not knowing a lot about Chinese culture. We
Mm,
weren't taught anything about China at school. And at home, my parents just wanted me to speak English and blend in and all of that. So, you know, growing up, I did have a lot of people ask me questions about my culture and my heritage that I didn't know the answers to. And I, always felt like I was disappointing them in some way,
mm,
and I felt like I needed to be the representative for my culture, but didn't know anything about it. So I could really relate to those feelings.
mm.
Um, for Summer at Squee specifically, I did get in touch with people who are adoptees and who are, maybe adoption scholars. I read a lot of books that they recommended. I watched a lot of documentaries. And this summer camp, Squee, is based on a Chinese heritage camp that my own kids went to when they were young. And I was on the organizing committee for it because all the parents are volunteers and we help run the camp. And it was really interesting to me how suddenly we had this huge influx of girls come to the camp, so much so that we could no longer like balance each group between, the numbers of boys and girls, but we had to create all girl groups.
Mhm.
And I wondered about that, and it turned out that a lot of them were Chinese adoptees.
Oh,
And so I wondered, like, how are the kids who are, you know, Chinese American with Chinese parents, how do they feel about the kids who are adoptees? And so that sort of generated a lot of questions that I was looking for the answers for.
that's a really great answer. And I love how you put so much research into the story, not just through your own experiences, but adding that extra bit of learning to it as you learn along with the reader. I think that's extra important and adds to the relatability, just kind of keeping everything, factual, but also it just kind of fun as a reader, all these learning opportunities. And Somewhere at Squee also tackles racism in the form of cyberbullying, which sadly is extremely prevalent today. And really, for as long as I can remember, and as long as I eventually will remember, with technology always growing and always becoming stronger, and social media becoming extra scary, I don't think it's
Yeah.
really going to go away anytime soon. So that's one of the reasons Summer at Squee is so relatable and so timeless. I guess my question for you is, how can we as kids, and even adults watching for that matter, how can we stand up against these forms of hate and all forms for that matter?
That is such a tough question. I'm glad you asked it. I'm hoping that, readers and listeners will ask those questions of themselves too. I don't know that I have any wonderful answers. I do think that we need to call out bullying and racism when we see
Right.
it and hear it, and we need to be allies for those people who are experiencing it. Um, and it's often hidden, right? I mean, in online cyberbullying especially, you don't know who's behind it. And
Mhm.
so it's hard to fight back against, but I think that if we just try to support each other. If you're comfortable telling grown-ups about what's going on, definitely tell a grown-up. Um, and in the book, the kids try to just rise above it, right? They're latching on to this phrase, joy is an act of resistance, and they're trying not to let the cyberbullies stop them from having, a good time at camp.
Right.
And that is the way that they're resisting and fighting back, by just being themselves and still
Love that.
finding the joy in being themselves.
Yeah, that's probably one of the best ways to fight back against bullying. Just don't listen to them. It can be really hard at first, but when you have a community like Squee, I think that it was really easier for the girls than it might be in other situations if you're alone, because you have those people supporting you who are always on your side, and you don't really feel
Yeah.
as scared. And of course, another way to combat bullying is by reading Summer at Squee, because it really tackles it. While it's not the main topic in the book, it definitely is prevalent, and you can learn a lot about standing up for yourself through joy, which is a really great outlet. So my
Yeah.
next question my next question for you is moving on to a different topic and a different book for that matter. Right here I have Watercress, which won a Caldecott Medal, which is a Newbery Honoree. And last summer, I found the story while I was on a trip to New York City. I was invited to visit Holiday House Publishers, and they gave me a signed copy of your picture book. And I had no idea at the time that I'd be sitting down virtually at that moment, but here we are. And so for those who don't know, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, but Watercress, it's a highly awarded story. I counted over 20 awards on your website, online, but I think the awards don't really, the awards are amazing, but the story is truly what gets you. The story is truly, it moved my mom to tears when I read it to her. It moved me to tears, and it's not a long, drawn out tale like many picture books could be, and many picture books are at this moment. It's just filled with feeling and emotion. It fills the pages like kind of like a novel, like it's a true story. And so it's a long-winded question. My question for you is, does Watercress hold personal meaning to you?
It does, very much so. It is basically a memoir. It's based on my own memory of being forced to pick watercress by the side of the road as a kid, and my parents, background as being immigrants from China. And I was less than happy to be made to pick watercress. Um, and, when I started writing this book, it started out as being a personal essay. I was writing it after my mom died as a way to stay closer to her. And at first, it was just this really happy story. Oh, look, we all went out and we gathered watercress, and it was great. And it didn't really ring true, and it didn't really work. And I didn't know why until I sat with it and kept working on it over the course of, probably 8 years or so. And
Oh,
over that time, it morphed into a picture book. And I tried writing it from a third person perspective, and, to make these kids seem like different characters from myself and my own brother. And then I realized that it really just needed to be about me and my family. And it wasn't a happy story. And I think it's because, like I said, I grew up in a very white community, and there was a lot of racism, and there, I didn't feel like I belonged. And I really had to just own it and process those feelings. And this is what came out. And it was kind of just very raw. I didn't expect it to become a picture book, but I think that Jason's amazing illustrations tell so much more of the story because there are so few words.
right.
So yeah, it's a very personal story, and I think Jason is the third generation Chinese American, and so he relates to it as well.
Yeah. I think as humans, we all go through tragedy, we all go through sadness in our
Yeah.
lives, and we sometimes, when it comes to books, we really relate, we reach out and connect with the characters when they're in the darkest of moments and situations. So that's why I feel that I personally connected with Watercress in a world where it's important to realize that not everything's perfect, not everything is happy, and there are joyous moments in our lives, but stories like Watercress, they're really deep, they're really important, and I'm thankful that you wrote such a book like Watercress.
Yeah.
So, I guess, my next question for you is, So many people, they know about Summer at Squee, they know about Watercress. Before diving into fiction, I was solely a nonfiction reader, and I also saw that you wrote nonfictional stories, and you wrote them for libraries and schools specifically. So can you share what exactly your library and school book series was, and if the writing process differs from how you craft your other books?
Yeah, so I started writing these library and school series before writing sort of and being traditionally published.
Mhm.
And those books are what we call write for hire. So maybe you've heard this term before from other authors where, an editorial company or a publisher contacts them and says, "Will you write a book about this?" And you're hired to write that book on that topic. And these were nonfiction because I have a background as a scientist, and so I knew how to research really well, and I knew how to go to the scientific literature. Um, and they said, "Do you want to write a book about, gorillas?" And I said, "Sure, that sounds cool. I have a biology degree." And so I went and I completely over researched it, as it turns out. I spent a lot of time just digging into it, but learned a lot of fascinating things about gorillas and then about all the other things that I wrote about later on. Um, and those books have such a tight timeline, like
Right.
if I'm just writing my own story, I could write it for years like I did with Watercress. But with write for hire books, sometimes you're given 8 weeks and it has to be done, or it has to be done in, 3 months. And that includes all the research and different drafts along the way. So it is a very different writing process. I had to learn how to craft like sidebar material to make it interesting to the reader, as well as discussion questions and back matter. And that was all really fun. I really enjoyed it because,
Mhm.
I love nonfiction as well. But um, I definitely learned how to make a timeline, like a deadline, to make a deadline and to stick to it, and to write fast. But now that I don't write for hire anymore, I take my own sweet time with my manuscripts.
All right, my next question for you is one that I am extremely excited to ask. So originally, we had to reschedule this interview, everybody, and it was kind of a blessing in disguise because I learned that you, Andrea, you have a new story that's going to be coming out. You announced a book deal, and originally I was going to ask if you have any projects or goals in mind, but I'm going to flip the script because I'm curious to learn about your new story that's coming out. Can you tell us the title? Can you tell us when we can see it and a little bit about it?
Sure. Wow. So this will be my first time talking about it with anybody other than my publishing team. So it is called Bittersweet, and it is about a young Chinese American girl who, is trying to cope with her father's moods and with a neighbor's racism. And she's kind of taking a cue from the Asian bittersweet vine growing in her backyard. And I think I was inspired because the Asian bittersweet vine was brought here as an ornamental plant by, white people to grow in their gardens. It's beautiful in the fall. It has these beautiful, red and yellow berries, and it has now become an invasive plant that they deem invasive. And so I saw a lot of parallels between the anti-Asian sentiment in the country today and the resilience of this bittersweet vine. And so I kind of wanted to write about that. It's informed a little bit about my own um, father and his dealing with being an immigrant and things that were tough in his life too. So hopefully that will come out in 2026, and it is illustrated again by Jason Chin. So look for his amazing illustrations.
Well, I am so excited. I'm sure we all are, and I don't want to wait that long because it sounds amazing. I mean,
Well, tell Jason to get on it.
yeah, I will. Everybody, you can reach out to Jason as well. So my next question for you, well, so I've talked to quite a few writers, and one thing that I love to ask is about your reading love as a child. So I read that you were an avid reader as a child, and you were always found with the head in a book, with your face just stuffed with the story right in front of it. And I guess my question for you is, besides your own, what is your favorite children's book, and why is it so special to you?
So I think when I was in middle school, one of my very favorite books was called Time at the Top
Hmm.
by an author named Edward Ormondroyd. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. And it is about kind of a lonely girl who lives in an apartment building. And one day she takes the elevator up to the top, but it goes beyond the top. And when she steps out, she ends up, back in time in a house.
Mhm.
And, I just loved that idea of there being this portal back into time or into another world. I've always loved portal stories. And so that really just captured my imagination. And she's also sort of solving a problem for some kids she meets back in time. So it just
I
hit
love
all the
that.
sweet spots for me.
Yeah. My next question for you is one that I love asking authors. I mean, every question I love asking, but this one is super special to me. If you could pick one song that best represents the book Summer at Squee, what song would it be and why?
I think you know the answer to this. It's a song that's actually in Summer at Squee, and it's called Growing Up by the Linda Lindas. And the Linda Lindas are they're a teenage punk rock group.
Mhm.
And this song, it's great. There's a video. It's awesome. It talks about growing up and how kind of bittersweet it is, but they have each other to lean on. So it's
Mhm.
about friendship, and it's about being there for each other, and not knowing what might be ahead, but enjoying the moment while it
Yeah.
lasts.
My next question for you is one that I've asked every single person that I've ever interviewed,
Mhm.
I think. Yeah, yes. So if you could be or meet any literary character, and by that I mean you could be or meet your favorite author, or it could be your favorite character in a story, who would it be and why?
I think my answer to this probably changes day by day and with every book I read, right?
Mhm.
That's a really tough question. I was thinking about it this morning, and I was obsessed with this book series called The Dragon Riders of Pern as a kid.
Mm,
I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's by Anne McCaffrey.
yeah.
And it was the first time that I had read a series about people not just riding dragons, but having this like bond with a dragon, like, and that you can hear them in your head and talk to them telepathically,
Mhm.
which I just think is the coolest thing. I've always wanted to be able to like talk to animals, and I would love to meet the main character of the first book. Her name is Lessa, and she just seems like such a very cool, strong female character. She bonds with a dragon, and she has to reclaim her birthright. Or
Mhm.
it's been a very long time since I've read these books, but I just think that would be fascinating to be in that world and to experience it through her eyes.
So thank you so, so much for talking with me today. This has been fun. This has been interesting. I've learned so much. I'm sure everybody else watching is dying to check out more of your stories. And I'm super happy that you could come on and share your story with me today.
Oh, this has been great, E-Train. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you for taking time out of your day. And your writing, it truly invites readers into other cultures. I love the term windows, mirrors, and sliding glass doors, and I feel that that perfectly resonates with your books. We get a window into the lives of Chinese Americans. We can learn about Chinese culture, but also it's so important for kids to see themselves in the stories that they read. That's where the mirrors come in, and then with the sliding glass doors, we can all come and experience culture. We can be together. Like you
Yeah.
said, there is cyberbullying in your books, but when we use joy, when we come together for good and for kindness, that's truly powerful. And it's been so great learning from you, so great meeting you virtually, and I cannot wait to read what you write next. And I'm sure everyone tuning in feels the same. So, once again, until we meet again, everybody stay safe, keep reading, and by keep reading, you know that I mean keep reading Andrea Wang's amazing books. You're going to love them. I truly mean it. From Watercress to Summer at Squee, you're going to love them. Thank you so much, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.